Hey everybody, what is going on? We are back. My name is Brian, and today we are taking a look at my top favorite rare or hard to find whiskeys of 2021. So on my previous video, I went through some of my single barrels or picks from this past year that I really enjoyed. And my hope is that I would do a couple of different lists and then I could blind taste those and do a general assumption, but I wanted to at least categorize them, separate them initially. The single barrel is more of an encouragement that you don't need to go after the allocated stuff. This particular list will be a lot of hard to find things. I live here in Louisville. I don't take that for granted or my ability to come into some of these bottles, but I also feel like it's fair for people who tune into the channel to not only know the things that I like for whether or not those are helpful videos throughout the year for you all, but then also, if I come into whiskeys that are really, really enjoyable to me, I want to make sure that I'm able to rank them appropriately and I don't really have kind of a skew factor towards just things that are accessible. And I know of a lot of folks who have asked for lists that are of products more accessible. And it's my hope that I'm able to bring some of that stuff to you. I've been working on a list of bottles this year that are a little bit more available. I know that sometimes when I've talked about things that are a little bit more available, people still say it's not available. And there won't be a list that is perfect for everybody. So this list, I hope, was titled very specifically. This is the top rare whiskeys of 2021 for me, for my palate, for this video, for you all. Let's start off with number 10, and we are kicking it off with the spring release of the Old Fitzgerald. This is the 8-year bottled in bond. What I love about this whiskey is when I first tried it, let's be honest, it's not the most complex pour. And it's a little bit more on the nutty side, a little bit of sweetness and fruit to it though too. And I just thought, wow, of all of the Old Fitzgerald decanters that I've had, this is one of the better expressions that I've had. And not because it was overly fruity, overly oaky or anything like that. There was just something about it that was really nice and unique and just a really good portrayal of Heaven Hill's whiskey. I think there's maybe only one other bottle that's come out. Maybe it's the first 9-year. There was probably one in the teens, 14 or 13 year olds old that I've tried that I really enjoyed as well. But this one at the beginning of the year was something I really enjoyed, and I knew that I wanted to find one of these bottles this year. So that is number 10 with the 8-year Old Fitzgerald decanter. Moving into number 9, which before other bottles came out towards the end of this year, this was probably even higher on my list. We were talking about the Old Forester 117 series High Angel Share, the first bottle that they put out of these. Now, if you remember my review of this initially, I was talking about how this had a profile that was really similar to King of Kentucky, but a little bit lighter. And there's something about this that I really enjoy. It has some of those more char, more heavy flavors that I like about Brown-Forman. And it honestly has a little bit of this flip to it that kind of reminds me of the 1910 profile as well. This kind of like exaggerated, leathery, char oak profile as well. And it's been really enjoyable. A release that they had here at the distillery, you were able to get a couple of them, these 375 bottles, and they weren't all that expensive as well. And that placed here 9th on my list of top rare whiskeys. Coming out soon after that, in a product that in years past I probably wouldn't have on my list at all, happens to be this year's Old Forester Birthday Bourbon. Now, particularly this year, I got a chance to try this. One of my friends, someone who I've been working on some coffee projects with, opened his bottle up at the bar near my work after they released. He came in town when they released and was able to get one. And I was a little bit shocked by how close, again, sort of like the 117, in profile it was to the flavors I like about King of Kentucky. Oaky, leathery, lots of good fruit notes, some chocolate notes, a pop of citrus, and then it had these barrel char notes that I really enjoy. And for being in the, what is it, 104 proof, this bottle, after the 117 came out, was the next closest bottle that I had to the profile of King of Kentucky. Probably not even as easy, or in some cases maybe easier, but not very easy to find like the King of Kentucky, but a profile that hits similarly in a retail price that was a little bit lower. That's my number 8 bottle, this year's Old Forester Birthday Bourbon. A bit controversial at first, but coming in at number 7 on my list is, I don't have a full bottle of it, Remus 5. Now, for a while, you know, and people who know me know, this is a bottle that I talked down. It's a bottle that I said, it's not very good. It's not necessarily worth the hype that everyone else is talking about. And I did a video that I recorded actually prior to this, but you'll probably see it next week, where I compared it to one of my favorite OKI Reserve bottles, and I brought in the Russell's 13 as well, just to kind of see where it sits, because it has a flavor profile that I really enjoy. Now, let me pause real quick and say here a couple of honorable mentions, if you will, or some adjacent bottles to this. Bottles that I would think that are in the same similar category, but Remus is taking the top place for. Calumet 15. Maybe in some markets there's Sam Houston 15, although the bottle that I tried, I was not very good. I preferred the Calumet 15 over that. Maybe your Knob Creek 12 or your Knob Creek 15 or the Bardstown Discovery 6. To me, to my palate, these all sit in a similar wheelhouse of flavor that have chocolate notes, that have oak notes, maybe some char notes, some sweetness, and fruit that balance as well. There's a pocket of flavor that I really enjoy. And this is one of those products, and the one that I'm throwing in the list for the more budget-friendly, more widely available than some of the others products, but still here on my rare list. The Remus 5 is great. It has some great honeyed sweetness. It's a little bit sugary and powdered sugar. Some of the notes that I mentioned in Four Roses products, honestly, and this can take the place of the Four Roses limited edition because, spoiler, you are not going to see it on this list. But it has some of those nice fruit sweetnesses. It has a little pop of citrus and then some oak and leather notes. The thing that really did this for me that didn't get it higher in the list is that the finish, once it was over, it kind of was over. It didn't linger very much. And some of the other whiskeys you'll notice on this list have a little bit more going on from the whole package. And I see where I probably could have put Remus a little bit higher on the list because of the price factor for it. But again, I want to look at these sort of objectively and go basically just by taste that I prefer, and I want to rank these as these are the top whiskeys of the year for me. So that is number 7, Remus 5. We are moving now to a bottle that I passed over quite a few times. This is the Blue Run Single Barrel 13.5 year. Now, there were multiple of these products that came out, 10 to be exact, of these single barrels. And this one is Barrel 3. If you remember me talking about Barrel 3, I think I took a couple of different views of this one. This one, to me, reminded me of George T. Stagg. And since we don't have George T. Stagg this year, this one's going to be my replacement. It was sugary and sweet and chocolatey and caramely and brown sugary, and it kind of hit with that punch, with the balance of oak that just, when I had it, it reminded me of the Stagg profile. Now, this one is hard to swallow. The retail price for this one came in around like $300 in the high twos or something like that. So it's one of those products that you would say it's going to have to walk the walk and talk the talk in order to be on the list. But again, it was a product that I have very fond memories trying with my friend Wayne at his bar, Merle's Whiskey Kitchen here in downtown Louisville, Kentucky. We sampled this together, and it was a bottle that I fell in love with, and I knew that I immediately had to find one after that. So that is the next bottle on our list. We are now moving into the top 5, and to round it and start off the top 5 is another bottle that I did not access this year. I would love to find one still. That is this year's Eagle Rare 17. Now, I haven't had a lot of the expressions of Eagle Rare 17, but when I got a chance to try this at one of my favorite bars in town, it was a pour that I loved. It wasn't exactly a replacement for George T. Stagg, but it hit all the things that I liked. It was very sweet. It didn't taste as oaky as the age statement was, but it had a perfect complement of oak to carry it on through. And it's a product that I just really enjoyed. I don't drink a lot of stuff from Buffalo Trace, but the ones that I do, they have a lot of elegance, they have a lot of flavor and a lot of complexity, and the Eagle Rare delivered on those regards. So coming in at number 5, Eagle Rare 17. Moving right along with number 4 is another surprise product for me. I did not know this was going to come out this year, and once I got a chance to try it, I was incredibly surprised and very much in love. That is the Jack Daniel's Coy Hill. Now, you know from past videos, I'm an advocate for the Jack Daniel's barrel-proof bourbons. I do think they're a little banana-y on some of them, a little bit hot, like the Old Forester single barrels. The Old Forester barrel strength single barrels aren't really my jam. This right here, along the lines with the 117, along the lines with the birthday bourbon. This one came out and I said, this is a young version of King of Kentucky. It's got the brown sugar. It's got a really long finish, good oak, and it does not drink its proof. I mean, you're talking all these bottles that I have are north of 140 proof, but they pack all of this heat and warmth that remind me of the old label Elijah Craig barrel proofs, but the sweetness and flavor and char and caramelized sweetness with a little bit of fruit too, that just give nods to, again, one of my favorites, King of Kentucky. I was not looking for this product this year, but it hit me, and I'm so glad that it did. Number 4 on the list, Jack Daniel's Coy Hill. That moves into number 3, and number 3 is in a lot of people's top place, and that happens to be this year's Russell's Reserve 13, another product I didn't expect to come out this year, and I like it for a lot of the reasons completely different than what I like about Russell's Reserve on its own. But this has so much complexity, really dark flavors, and honestly, what wins this one for me is how lingering and long the finish is. It's a completely different whiskey. I could sit with it for a very long time. It continues to evolve. It's got really dark characteristics initially, but as it sits out in the glass, I'm actually sipping this right now, the nose begins to open up. You get some apple notes start to come out there, which again, if you know my reviews on this, is a brighter note than normal. It pops on the palate still too. There is so much to discover the longer you sit with this. It's a beautiful bottle, the Russell's Reserve 13. Moving into number 2 was the last surprise bottle of the year for me, but this was, as you've seen me recently talk about, the 20-year release of the OBSV single barrel from Four Roses. Now, to me, if you like the more sugary sweetness that that Remus 5 has, but you also like just the linger, the complexity, the richness of Russell's 13, if you've tried both of those, I feel like this Four Roses amplifies that up a little bit more. It gives it elegance for a 20-year pour. It is different than Four Roses products, so I don't look at it the same way that I look at Four Roses single barrels. I look at it as a well-aged whiskey that has flavor nods to a lot of things that I liked about Four Roses products, various products from LEs to single barrels. It's a beautiful package. It's a beautiful bottle. Lots of nuance, a lot of complexity, good richness, and everything for the age. Especially at the price point it came at. I know they're very difficult to come across on secondary market, but for a retail price under $200, 20-year bourbon, great deal. This was a beautiful bourbon, another unexpected one. Which brings us to my number 1 bottle of the year, which if you know me on the channel, you should know is probably no surprise. It happens to be this year's King of Kentucky. King of Kentucky, for some reason, is the bourbon that I put everything else up against. It is big, it is bold, it has spice, but it has flavor for days. It reminds me of a Dusty in a lot of ways, but it's also very sweet and fruit forward. It has barrel char, and it reminds me, it's a pour I feel like we're not supposed to have. It is a profile that is different than a lot of other things on the market, and it just still isn't matched. And maybe I should take this off my list in future years like Fred Minnick did, but until then, this year was a very good year. I really liked the bottles in 2019. 2020 were fine, but all of the barrels I've tried 6 so far in 2021, and they have been on the same level, except for one barrel, of the barrels that I've had in 2019. Fantastic product this year, great quality. Now, I know that was kind of fast to go through this list, but I don't want to keep you guys here forever. If you guys have questions about this, I'd love for you to shoot me a message or leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you hate this list. Let me know if you find this list helpful or not. Again, I know, and I've titled it this way, I know that these are going to be hard to find whiskeys, but my hope is that if you all have a choice of saying, of some of these hard to find whiskeys, what's one I'm going to go after? Which one might be better? According to my palate, this is how I would rank them. And if you have any questions about some of these products, I'd love to help you answer that. Shoot me a message online. Follow me on Instagram at Abandoned Bourbon. Shoot me a DM over there if you need to get more wordy than what you can do down here in the comments. If you did find this video helpful, thanks so much for tuning in. And I know a lot of you all have. I finally hit 2,000 subscribers. Thank you. It was my goal to hit that before the end of the year. I didn't quite, but I did right after. And my hope is to continue to grow through this year and hope to continue to put out more content helpful for you all. Let's talk about some other trends and things that I found really interesting about this year. Again, as you notice, I did not put the Four Roses LE on this list. I didn't really think it was one of the better LE expressions this year. And when I tried it against some of these other products, while it starts off with a richness that I really enjoy, there's a little bit about the flavor that kind of falls off for me. It's not one of my favorite ones. I really like drinking it. I don't mind drinking it, but you know, the 2019 LE for me, it sits really well. And even the 2020 was pretty unique in some spice category. But the 2021, I still have yet to really fall in love with. And so it just wasn't a bottle that placed for me. Another thing I was really disappointed about was, personally, the E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof this year. I had a chance to try it at a bar, and I thought it was no better than a Russell's Reserve. It was kind of hot. It was kind of spicy. It didn't really give me a whole lot, and that was a bit surprising to me. I would have thought that, you know, that's historically been one of my favorite products out of E.H. Taylor. And their more limited product that they had this year, the Warehouse C, I had a pour of that, and again, personal opinion, that was no better than an E.H. Taylor small batch. And for something that goes so hard to come by, with so very few bottles out there, and again, I know that Buffalo Trace doesn't control the secondary prices, but they're astronomical for what this bottle actually is on the palate. Another bottle that was in a lot of people's lists, I totally understand. I have it back here. It was the Makers FAE 02. Now, I am in the camp of people who prefer the 02 over the 01. And this has some flavor notes in that same pocket, like I talked about with the Remus and the Calumet. There are some notes that are similar to that, but I can't get over this kind of mixture of a little too young notes with some exaggerated aged notes to it. And to me, it just kept coming off pretty broken up on the palate. Confusing, a little dissected, and it just prevented me from really enjoying the pour. Really nicely available limited edition and drinkable for sure, but for me to analyze compared to other bourbons, it just wasn't really one that jumped out to me for the list for top whiskeys of the year. I know a lot of people were dogging on the Elijah Craig Barrel Proofs this year, and while it wasn't my favorite year of releases for Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, I did do a blind with a friend, and you know, objectively tasting them all, they're really good bourbons. Again, it didn't show up in my list this year, but if you checked out my single barrel review that I did last video, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof pick that I got from a store in Nashville did. And I would probably say, while off profile, it was better than the other picks that came out, or the other Elijah Craig Barrel Proofs that came out this year. But it wasn't you know, they're still really great pours for the price. And I highly suggest, if you're able to come into one, picking one up. They're really great values. Again, one thing that I really enjoyed about sectioning off these videos of the allocated whiskeys versus the top picks, and one thing you'll notice, again, the Old Fitzgerald 8-year was my number 10 bottle, and personally, the flavor, enjoyment, and complexity between what's number 10 on my list and what's number 1 on my list is really big. And in a normal other list, I don't know that the Old Fitz 8-year would make that. What I'm saying by this is, I don't know that there were really 10 products that I would say were overly exceptional, allocated, rare, hard to find whiskeys this year. And that actually puts a little bit more weight into my list of the top picks that I did. It's saying there were more bottles that I feel like I could put into single bottle, single barrel picks that I found more enjoyable. There were more of those that I would rather lean towards and drink than some of the bottles that are here. While some of these were really great, really flavorful, and again, have a lot of similarities in common on the palate, I just don't think that there were as many of these rare whiskeys that were 9s out of 10 than there were enjoyable bottles that fit into the single barrel list. Some other things that really surprised me this year, I'm not really one who chases after Stag Junior, but I had tried a bottling of this year's Weller 12 at the bar recently, and I got to try, I believe it was batch 16 of Stag Junior. Both those products, really enjoyable. Again, products I normally wouldn't have given another nod to because they haven't exactly been there on my palate in years past, but it takes coming back to them sometimes and then saying, oh, you know, maybe I should keep looking at that. But I was really surprised with the flavor that came out of Stag Junior. Definitely something I have, again, back on my radar. I don't know so much about Weller 12. I've not seen it in my area at all this year, where a couple years ago, I was able to at least come into a few of them, but still a really nice pour. One that I've not done a video of before, but I've definitely in blinds on multiple occasions placed it above the Lot B that's in the Van Winkle lineup. All right, guys, so that's a little bit of extra information to come after my top Rare Whiskies of the year. I hope that was informational about how I've digested some of this information this year and some of these picks this year. Again, I'd love to hear what some of your all's favorite whiskeys have been. Leave them down below. Let me know some of your favorites have been. Let me know some of your worsts have been. I would just love to hear more from you all. Again, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, give me a thumbs up on the video. Let me know if you're enjoying the content or if there's other things you want to hear me talk about on upcoming videos. If you want more content, please subscribe to the Entry Proof Podcast. It's a podcast that I do with Drew P. Whiskey. He's also here on YouTube, and we're usually live on his channel on Thursday nights doing blind flights, talking about our upcoming barrel picks, or any number of things, maybe having a guest on. Getting ready for our shows. If you want to support the channel, what I'm doing here, what Drew's doing, get access to our barrel picks, you can do so at patreon.com/entryproofpodcast. Until next time, everybody, I hope we have a really exciting 2022. I'm really looking forward to the products that we might have coming up this year. We'll see you all later.